live then, right? When he does stream the video live,
If he streams it live,
they won't know we aren't technically live.
That's what you plan to do, huh? Just stream it live one time? That makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll do that bit.
Do me a favor, Jack.
Yeah.
Check your phone and see if it is live, because I did hit the start streaming button. It seems like it went.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, the home of the anti-establishment movement in this country. With me, as always, Jack Fairchild. Jack, how are you?
Hey, Chris, happy Easter to you, too.
Happy Easter. Huge holiday for Christians, obviously, worldwide, and we'll probably talk about that at some point today. If you notice, I'm in a T-shirt, baseball cap, I have a balloon. I don't know where the balloon came from.
I was about to say, where did you get a balloon?
It was just floated up under the table. It was the surprise of the day. Last night, listen, I didn't go to bed till late. I wasn't partying or anything like that. It was my son. He wasn't partying. He was having a party for his prom. And we were able to host it at the house. And as you can imagine, the seniors, feeling like big guys and big girls, they stayed late, so I haven't slept much. So I'll only say that to say this. I can't be held responsible for anything I've said today.
And full disclosure, I was helping you with that party, so we're on the same level of sleep.
This is the disclosure. You know how sometimes Pat McAfee will have a disclosure, and he'll say, these are just regular guys talking this. Please don't sue us. That's kind of what this show is like today. There's so much to discuss. First of all, I was really proud of my son, Cambridge. I don't know if you have followed him online, but well, he's a remarkable young man, and I don't say that because he's my son. I'm not proud of him simply because he's my son, even though I love him. I'm proud of him because of the man he's become. He's a good baseball player, but that's not a big deal. I mean, he could be the greatest baseball player in the country. Not a big deal. What matters is that you raise kids that are good kids, kids that have character. And I'll tell you something, it was nothing that I did. Somehow I just lucked up and was able to have a great child. I will speak to that issue a second time when my youngest gets to be a senior. I may have an entirely different story at that phase of my life, but God has blessed us with Cambridge, and I want him to know if he comes back and watches this one day, if he's watching now, that I love you very much. I'm so proud of you. And, as much as I love watching you play baseball, I don't care if you ever hit. I don't care if you've ever pitched. You are my son, and you're a good boy, and that is enough. And I love you very much, and I always will. Always be proud of you. So I'm glad you had a good time at the prom last night. I hope you're awake. You may not be. But here's the thing. There'll always be ups and downs. Always remember that. And no matter what, just know your dad loves you. I love you the way AOC loves socialism.
That's a lot.
I love you the way Bernie Sanders likes free stuff. That's how much I love you. Anyway, there's so much to talk about. I mentioned those two because they've been in the press over the last couple of days. Holding rallies. It's that large, really vocal segment of their party that likes to attend rallies and likes to raise all that noise, but really is the nutcases around us. You know who I'm talking about. It's the socialists in that party that are pulling that party so far to the left it's unrecognizable. Here's the good news. It's because of those socialists and because of their critical race theory and because of their gender theories and because of all the weird things they've done over the last 2 or 3 years that the Democrats can't seem to win big elections. So it's good that AOC and Bernie Sanders are out there doing their thing, and I'll get to that more again later. But first things first, they're taking on Trump. Trump's a big bad guy, they say. And they're not the only one. So let's get into the show. If you haven't noticed over the last few days, Trump is taking on many of America's institutions. You say, what are those institutions? Well, the old school established institutions, such as universities and colleges, such as the federal judiciary. And we've already seen him take on the institutions in Washington that seemingly care more about their employees than they do about saving money. And so he is out there doing the best he can under very difficult circumstances to take on these age-old institutions. And now they're pushing back. And I find this article in the Wall Street Journal, of all places, because the Wall Street Journal normally is a fairly conservative, I say fairly conservative, it's more conservative than the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune. Jack, this is professional radio.
It is.
Did you hear what Jack just did?
Oh, it's difficult trying to share everything where we need to get it shared.
No, here's the thing. So as he takes on these institutions and attempts to effectuate change, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be pushback. And there's nothing we can do about that except prepare ourselves for the pushback and support the administration as much as we can when he's doing the right thing. That's not to say he always does the right thing. I'm not one of those guys. Every man and woman, every executive level position, every politician makes good decisions and sometimes not so good decisions. But we still back him when he's positive and good, and we should be man enough to call him out when we disagree from time to time with what he's trying to do. And there's so much to talk about, because whether it's the universities or the law firms or whether it's the federal judges, I think Trump is within his constitutional boundaries to push back the way he's pushing back. Now, Harvard may disagree. Some of the courts may disagree. I don't necessarily agree with Trump's position with the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
I don't like the Federal Reserve. I wish there were no Federal Reserve. I would like to find a way to go back pre-1913 and find a way to not give that organization so much power. But my concern there would be if we lower interest rates now in light of these inflationary concerns, that it could just be a inflationary nightmare, like throwing gas, fuel on gas, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. What I want to talk about now is this: Democrats, universities, and courts. Have you heard all the ruckus about the Alien Enemies Act?
I have, yes.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of us catch the news and we hear about the Alien Enemies Act, but we don't really ask ourselves, what does that mean? Because remember, some courts now are pushing back against Trump. He's done his best to deport some Venezuelans and some of those from El Salvador, most of which are gang-affiliated folks, right? And he's done that through this old Alien Enemies Act. Now, this thing was codified in 1798. That's a long time ago. It was part of the Alien and Sedition Acts. And as a Jeffersonian, I am not a fan of things Adams did in this regard, but it's still the law of the day. Jefferson did not like the Alien and Sedition Acts. Most of the Anti-Federalists did not at the time. So I get why there's some concerns here, but yet this is the law of the land. Let's look at the law here, because this is the law Trump is using to expel some of these, unsavory type individuals. And yes, they should be expelled. Does anybody disagree with that? Before I go any further, if you're a member of a radicalized, nasty gang, whether it's terror-related or whether it's fentanyl-related, or whether you're just trafficking women and dope, if you're part of that nonsense and you're a non-American citizen, why should you be allowed to stay?
That's a great point.
Okay, that's the first question. I think that's what some people seem to miss. They get so caught up in individual liberties and rights. And listen, I'm with you there, but these are non-citizens that are committing atrocious crimes in this country. So let's look at this act and let's see if it applies. It says whenever there is a declared war between the U.S. and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion, and the president shall make a public proclamation, then he can deport. Now, I paraphrase the last part, but it's just a bunch of statutory gobbledygook, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. There has to be a proclamation. a declaration of war, or, there's an or there. Do you see that or? That matters here. Any invasion or predatory incursion. There it is. Predatory incursion. From that point of the statute, he's checking the boxes. And the liberals say, well, my goodness, it was passed in 1798. It's still law.
Yeah.
It's still law. And by the way, it was used in World War II, which, historically speaking, was only a blink ago, right? It was used against the Germans, the Japanese, right?
It was.
And the Italians. I like Italians. But, there were some problematic ones here, I'm sure.
I'm sure there were.
But it was used in World War II and nobody blinked an eye.
No.
But now the liberals will say, well, how dare you use such an old, hostile and antiquated act to take these actions. It doesn't matter if it's old, if it's the law.
Yeah.
It's the law. The only question is, did he abide by the law? So let's look at it one more time, right? Just take a look. We haven't formally declared war, but we are in a state of hostilities. Okay? He made the proclamation. A couple of them, in fact. I'll talk to you about that in a second. And then he began to deport. Here's the rub. The way the Supreme Court over the years has interpreted this particular act, and by the way, they've only done it like 2 times.
Yeah.
Each time, they did give the president broad powers to enforce the act. Do you know why they gave the president broad powers to enforce the act? Because Congress, in its writing, gave the president broad powers to enforce the act. So it's not a congressional question of whether these folks should be deported. It's in the law. So the president has discretion.
Yeah.
The deal for him now is what's called due process. Due process. The court has made the argument, and a federal district court has made the argument that these folks, some of these folks, not all of them, some of these folks weren't afforded due process. What is due process? That basically means notice and a chance to argue that the law does not apply to you. First is notice, okay? In other words, they're saying that he acted too quickly. Notice. And then secondly, they're arguing by acting so quickly, these folks did not have a chance to argue that the law was not applicable. And that's where the rub is. And so we know he did the notice challenge. We know he has exercised the law appropriately with the exception of due process. And there's an argument to be made, certainly, and the court has recognized this, that due process should have been given, especially to this one cat, Garcia. You've read about him, right?
I have.
Here's the thing. I hesitate to talk about this because folks will take it the wrong way. If he's over now in a prison in El Salvador, the Trump administration has said they've tried to facilitate his return. But El Salvador's president is saying, no, that's not Trump's fault.
No.
Okay, number one. Number two, and this is where the rubber meets the road from my perspective. If they do bring him back and they give him due process, they're just going to deport him again.
Yeah.
I mean, is that really a good use of taxpayer dollars?
Not at all.
And here's the thing. People say, well, maybe they won't. Maybe you can prove that he's not a member of MS-13. Have you seen the pictures of his hands?
Yeah, he's a member.
Okay. By the way, let's talk about, is Garcia a member or not of MS-13? Because that in and of itself is incriminating enough under the proclamation for Trump to say, you got to go.
Yeah.
Right? Is he? Insider scoop is the one that fingered him on that issue, an insider with MS-13. We have that evidence. Number two, when he was picked up once before, he was with 2 MS-13 members that had drugs on them and weapons on them.
Yeah.
I guess he's just at the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Well, it's prone to happen, right?
There are tattoos on it that indicate MS-13 membership, right? But perhaps more importantly, just to get past that for a second, there's also evidence that he beat his wife.
Yep.
And this isn't evidence that conservatives created in a factory. She alleged this in a court pleading, right? And she said it was multiple times. So here you have Democrats, you got an MS-13 member, so it appears. You got a guy that beats his wife, clearly, right? And you got a guy that has been arrested with MS-13 members with drugs and weapons. He's a bad dude. Let's not pretend he's not. They didn't pick up Pollyanna and deport her, right?
No.
Right? This is a bad guy. And so now the liberals, like they always do, always choosing the wrong side of history. Don't kid yourself. They're not concerned about due process. This guy stood up to Trump, and that makes him a celebrity in their movement.
Absolutely.
And that's how they make their calls every day. They don't look at things through reason or rationale. They don't ask the tough questions. The only question they ask is it against Trump? Yeah. And if it's against Trump, they by virtue rubber stamp it, not by virtue, by almost unanimously rubber stamp it, right?
Yeah. And
then it becomes their rallying cry. Well, think about it. It's all we've heard over the last week. What's it been? MSNBC, NBC, CNN, all trying to convince you this guy is not a member of MS-13.
And that he's just an outstanding citizen that we should have never sent back to El Salvador.
Citizen of Maryland.
Yes.
Constituent. I'm going to get to that senator in a minute. Constituent of Maryland. The Democrats always choose the wrong side. And it's fortuitous for us that this guy does have this nasty record, because they only can point to it and to the American people and say, see?
Yeah.
And initially, right, they said it was administrative error. May have been. Doesn't change the fact that this guy's a punk.
Yeah.
Right? So, whatever. You feel like you want to go through the process, Your Honor, and we'll go through the process, okay? We'll fly him back over. I'm going to show you this evidence, including the tattoos on his hands, the testimony of his wife, the testimony. We'll even bring in the whistleblower, the guy that fingered him in the first place. We'll bring him in. We'll put him on the stand, and the judge will say, oh, yeah, after all this money and time and expense waste, you still got to go.
Yeah.
You still got to go, right? And that's what's going to happen, because I think they will eventually bring him back. And that's where it's going to get really interesting, because the liberals will make him a celebrity again. I can just see him now making the talk show circuit.
Well,
before you go, who's going to have him on? The View?
Oh, of course.
I wonder.
Rachel Maddow.
Hold on. I'm going to talk to the liberals real quick about this, because The View, I'm sure they really give a dang about due process. Those ladies don't know what due process is. No. Rachel Maddow has no idea. But I did think you liberal women had enough sense to not, I don't know, defend a woman beater. You know, all I hear is about you're pro-woman, and pro-woman, yet you hate Trump so much, you'll defend a guy that beats his wife and has multiple times. That's just weird to me. Where are these people? What are they doing except hating Donald Trump? So he's going to make the talk show circuit. And you can hear it now. And he'll maybe have gloves on. Maybe they'll hide his hands so you can't see the tattoos. Maybe they'll rub it off. I don't know. What I do know is they're going to put him in a nice little shirt. He's going to have a nice little baseball cap on. You see the meeting he had with the senator?
I did.
He looked like a regular truck driver.
Yeah, he did.
That's not who he is.
No, it's not.
But that's well scripted. Well done, Democrats.
Well, Chris, if you look at the liberals' recent track record of the people that they're trying to make into martyrs / heroes, I mean, you can go back and you see this guy that murdered the healthcare CEO, this Luigi Mangini, the guy that they have decided, hey, this guy's a hero because he murdered a billionaire, part of an insurance CEO. So they turned this guy, who is a cold-blooded killer, into a hero in their eyes. And you go down the list, they are just so desperate to make heroes out of some of the worst. Look, you can say what you want about some of the bad things of other, but when you point to somebody that is cold-blooded murderer, and you point to folks like this,
social media's got it nailed. I just saw a post. They can already see the movie being made for this guy. This is going to be the next Gandhi for these people. And, it's funny because let's have another quick conversation before we transition to Harvard. You guys got to hear about Harvard. This infuriated me. Here's the other issue. Do American citizens enjoy the same rights and vice versa as non-U.S. citizens? That's a great question legally. And I've been an attorney for some time, and my first inclination is, of course not. But the Supreme Court has ruled otherwise. And you say, well, what about voting? Oh, it gets complicated. When it comes to privileges of citizenship, rights like voting, right? Yeah. Like serving in office, things of this nature. Oh, non-citizens don't have rights. Yeah. But when it comes to other things, they apply rights. So there's a bifurcated system they've created in this country. All I've got to know is that, look, I'm all about due process, but this guy's a punk.
Yeah.
He's got to go. And all of his ilk has to go as well. I'm happy that President Trump has initiated the proclamation he initiated. I'm pleased that he's following the letter of the law. The only problem seems to be due process. Okay, let's fly him back over.
Waste taxpayer money.
Let's do it. We'll fly him back over, put him on a stand. Like the liberals, they'll parade him around. Then he's still going to have to go back to El Salvador. So we'll see.
Before you switch gears, though, there is something I want to, because again, liberals just going against Trump, that's something we expect. They always, because again, they're still playing that red team, blue team, versus blue team crap that isn't even really real for the most part. I think the ones that frustrate me the most are people that usually side on the side of common sense, who anytime they're just so anti-Trump that they have checked out on some of their common sense, checked out on some of their reality, and are willing to just find whatever they can, and they'll side with these liberals despite the fact they disagree with them on every policy issue, but they flock to them and side with them because their hatred of Trump is so strong.
You have that on both sides of the equation. And that's okay. I've got a buddy of mine that's not a big Trump fan, and he's a good friend, close friend. I like him a lot. Not a big Trump fan. That's fine. But these issues like this, these folks would be silent, or relatively silent, on every other deportation or every other criminal offense that occurs in this country. Would never mention due process, would never mention a violation of the Alien Enemies Act unless it was against Donald Trump. Yeah. And so your point is well made. And we do it too. Hey, we've done this.
No,
we were the same way to Barack Obama. I know I was. Barack Obama could have said something that sounded reasonable, and I knew immediately. I was skeptical, right? I just like, I don't know about this guy. He sounds good, but I don't. And I never did like his policy. So it's human nature to pick a tribe and then try to do our best to attack the other tribe. I'm not saying that's right. I am saying it's somewhat human. Speaking of more obstacles in the way of Trump, this is important. Universities. This really fires me up. It really fires me up because these universities for years have been churning out little socialists by design. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And the universities are all guilty for the most part. Now, there are some less guilty than others. But as you so-called advance up the hierarchy, these so-called premium Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, Brown, whatever, Pennsylvania, they all seem to have one thing in common. They're good at producing communists, little socialists. Also, they have something else in common. They're good at raising tuition and people incurring tremendous amounts of debt to go to school there, many of times for useless degrees. Oh, I know, this is going to touch on some hard feelings here. If you major in 13th century women's studies, you're not going to make a living with that degree. If you major in artwork, for the most part, you're not going to make a living with that degree. So I'm not demeaning the study. There's nothing wrong with elevating one's ability and one's intellect, but ultimately, the education should be about acquiring a skill set that enables you to compete in society. Yeah. It shouldn't be about a grievance nature or the study of the Communist Manifesto word for word every couple of days. It should be something you can do to make money. Well, liberals always manage to choose the very worst majors and then complain when they can't afford their health care, right? And want us to pay for their health care. How about choose a better major next time? Harvard. This really ticks me off. So the Trump administration writes a letter to Harvard in early April. And you tell me if you think this is reasonable. They write to Harvard and they want audits of Harvard's academic programs and departments. They want to make sure that Harvard is creating, get this, a diverse society for the exchange of viewpoints and ideas. They want to make sure that students and faculty and staff are safe and can express themselves. I like that. That's what universities are supposed to be. Universities are supposed to be a place where your mind is challenged, where ideas are challenged. A monolithic approach, that is socialism, and telling others to sit down and shut up, that's not diversity of viewpoints. That's not the marketplace of ideas we expect our universities to be and become. Harvard hasn't done a good job, particularly with their Jewish students, in making sure they have a voice and they feel protected. Columbia is right there with them. So Trump did, for an audit of those programs. He also wanted to implement reforms. Sounds good. They wanted better faculty members, not just researchers and socialists, but maybe a different viewpoint from those faculty members. Have you ever considered that for all the talk about intellectual diversity, there are no conservatives teaching on college campuses? What good is that? Surely, since we make up 40% of the population, I'm doing liberal math now, because you do this all the time to us. If we make up 40% of the population, shouldn't we likewise be 40% of the university professors?
Maybe so.
That's only fair, isn't it? That's the spreadsheet fair they always use on us. Hear that argument all the time. 40%, give us 40% of the professorships. No. There are almost no Republicans at any of these institutions. Have you ever seen the data? It's 90+% Democrats. Well, they're just smarter. No, they're not. No, they're not. I have to be careful here. My dad was a professor, but I recognize too what drives them. Intellectual pursuit on somebody else's dime, right? And I guess to brainwash children all across the country. Well, here we are. The third thing Trump asked for was altering admissions, get this, and hiring practices, get this, to get rid of DEI. I'm going to translate that for you, to get rid of reverse racism. All he was saying is that racism is bad. You have to be colorblind when you hire. You have to be colorblind when you admit. Is that a bad thing? After all these years of affirmative action, after all these years of watching Asians and whites not get in because other less qualified folks were getting in under the law, he's just saying, look, it's time to stop that. The Supreme Court, likewise, over the last 30 years has been saying it's almost time to stop. It's almost time to stop. It's just time to stop it. Is that a problem?
It's not
okay,
for me.
Well, let's talk about this. One more thing you wanted. He says, how about the anti-Jewish sentiment on the campus? Can you do something about it? You know, Palestinians, I guess, are everywhere in our Ivy League institutions, right? Because every time something happens, they're boycotting. Oh, goodness, the phones are ringing. But they're boycotting. Here's the thing. 4 requests. Pretty simple request. Harvard said no. Did you see that?
I did.
Wait, it's pretty cool, though, because they said no. And your position is unmoored from the law. Leave it to Harvard. Not that the position is unlawful.
Yeah.
Not that the position is wrong. It's unmoored. It's a beautiful word. It's a very old word. Unmoored from the law. Well, that's great. That's fine. But I'll tell you what's not unmoored from the law. We, the taxpayers of this country, give Harvard $2.2 billion every year. Do you know that? Harvard is a private institution. I'll be the first to tell you, the federal government has no business whatsoever dictating to a private institution. None. But it can choose where it sends $2.2 billion.
Yeah.
So the Trump administration said, fine, if you're going to behave that way, how about we just freeze your $2.2 billion? And they've lost their collective minds.
They shouldn't be getting it anyway.
Everybody, they've lost. I'm going to get to that. That's what I said. Hold on. They lost their minds. Private institution. Granted, if they argue as a private institution, the government can't tell us what to do, I would agree with that. But they can't say, but we still deserve your money. See, that's the problem, Harvard. You're smart. You should know when you take money from the federal government, there are strings attached to that money. You've never minded removing money from Christian organizations. You've never minded threatening churches with their tax-exempt status. You've never minded using the force of government to dictate to bakeries and others what they can and can't do with their own private affairs. But now you're mad, Harvard, right? You don't deserve that money. And Trump should pull it and keep it pulled. Number 2, they've given these institutions a tax-exempt status. Did you know that?
I did not.
For what? For what? Tax exempt while we pay taxes, so they can sit in their ivory towers and brainwash their students to hate the United States of America. Brainwash their students to believe that somehow this is a backwards, wrong-headed country, when no country in the history of the world has ever done more for civil rights, ever done more for individual rights, ever done more for religious rights than the United States of America. Yet they sit there in these institutions of higher learning and they attack and demean and minimize what America is supposed to be, what it always has been. Because I think what it does, it makes them feel empowered. Okay, fine. So a fight is about to be had. Now, to your point you were making a minute ago, Harvard, you get $2.2 billion of our money each year. It begs the question, how wealthy are you already? Because if you're wealthy, you're Harvard. Let's not get this wrong. You're one of the oldest educational institutions in the world, not counting Oxford and some of the schools in Europe. You are elite in many, many ways. I've been on your campus multiple times. Love it. Beautiful. Wonderful. Wealthy. I'm not talking about Irish money or Scots money. I'm talking about old English money. I'm talking about money you can't imagine, money you have to inherit to have a chance to go there. You go to Harvard. That's one reason all these few past presidents have been to Harvard. It's a very elite institution.
Yeah, it is.
So it begs the question, how much money do you have?
Enough.
Oh, their endowment, $53.2 billion.
Yeah.
Get this, the largest endowment of any institution in the world. Why are they getting our tax dollars?
You don't think a dime should go to
you don't think we can pay for it? We need that money back?
Absolutely.
Okay. Harvard doesn't deserve this money, not a dime. The largest endowment of any university in the world. To put things in perspective, just last year, their alumni and others gave them $2.4 billion. Billion.
Wow.
This is a school. And they were given $2.4 billion. They don't deserve a dime of our money. It gets worse. Despite getting all that money, you do the one thing these Ivy League schools do every single year. They keep raising tuition. Now, granted, the federal government can't tell you what to do. You're a private institution. But if you're going to keep taking advantage of the taxpayers and then take advantage of their kids by charging them more, when you have all this money already sitting there in your pockets, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
So again, old institutions, right? Old institutions pushing back against Trump, but he's doing exactly what he has the power to do. The federal government does have the power to rescind or freeze that money, and they should. You good?
I'm good. I'm still blown away at the fact that Harvard's getting that much money when they already have even more so. And the fact that they have the audacity. Now, I'm not shocked they're complaining about the possibility of losing it, because that's what crybabies do. But the fact that they're going to sit here, and the left, the ones who are always, attacking the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, they're the ones trying to take Harvard's side here. And isn't this very much the type thing you should want to see? Because again, it's a rich, wealthy institution that is rich on its own. Shouldn't you be okay with government not giving them $2 billion and maybe, spending it elsewhere? But again, that goes back to the hypocrisy that we see all the time in these type of arguments.
It's a real mess. And as you can see, it fires me up. I don't know if it should or not. By the way, somebody keeps psycho-dialing my phone. There's a lesson in life. If you've called somebody 3 or 4 or 5 times, you better dang well have an emergency.
Yeah.
Or better yet, text.
Yeah.
This is not my phone any longer. This is a texting device.
It is.
And the idea that you can just psycho-dial, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and answer it. Text me.
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
You're not.
It's probably Harvard.
It might be. It could be the advertiser saying, take a break.
Jeez. How much time do we have till a commercial? We getting close? You mean I've ranted for that long?
You've done well.
Well, it's a matter of opinion. Okay.
My opinion's the right one.
Let's take a commercial break real quick.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't. Escape to Pearl River Resort.
All right, welcome back to the show. I went off on Harvard. I've gone off on federal judges, but I'm not done with the federal judges just yet.
I want to hear.
I'm not done with the federal judges just yet. The liberals, again, are defending this judge who's threatening contempt charges against the Justice Department. And the contempt charges revolve around the fact that, this cat was sent back overseas when they were told evidently not to send him overseas. Now, I don't know the timing of all that, right? I don't understand the timing yet. I haven't researched it. Here's what I do know. Whenever I hear a federal judge complaining about executive authority, it gets my attention because I'm not a big fan of unilateral executive authority either. But I find it hypocritical for these individuals to dare speak to the issue, particularly if they're from the left. And you say, what does that mean? Your liberal bias is showing. It's really simple. The American left, for as long as I can remember, their federal judges, have practiced a concept known as the living Constitution. The living Constitution.
Yep.
And I know that sounds cool because no one wants to think about our Constitution as being dead, like Scalia once said. But the living Constitution is a judicial interpretation philosophy that completely does away with the black letter law of our Constitution. Here's the way it works. If a federal judge high in his chambers has decided that the Constitution's words are antiquated or old or no longer really fashionable, he'll twist and turn those words to create what in his mind the law should be. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
There's no way to explain Roe versus Wade but for that type of creation of law. Let me explain that before I bore you to death. Roe versus Wade wasn't simply about abortion, but I have looked at the Constitution and the word abortion isn't there. If it's not there, if the document is silent to that issue, then it begs the question why the federal government has any interest in that issue whatsoever. Think education as well. But federal judges, taking advantage of a doctrine called substantive due process, envisioned this new right to an abortion. The right's not in the Constitution. Furthermore, the right was never a part of this nation's tradition or history. So you got to work hard to create a right that wasn't a right, isn't listed as a right, and had been prohibited criminally for centuries. But the 73 court looked at it and they said, oh, trust us. It's a right. No, you created that out of thin air. That's not democratic. That's not the way our government is supposed to work, but you did. Now, the mindset there is that the law is slow to change. Because the law is slow to change, judges can be the smarter people in the room and they can change it unilaterally. I'm getting to something here. That's BS.
Yeah.
That's BS. The conservative mindset looks at the text of the documents. It's called textualism and originalism. Either the words themselves matter exactly as they're written, and if you can't get a good interpretation of that, consider the debates on the floor when it was passed. Consider how contemporaries framed the language when it was passed. Now we're bound to doctrine. We're bound to a rigid interpretation. It's not subject to my opinion. It is what it's supposed to be historically speaking. That's called originalism. Now, if you're an originalist and you want to talk about due process, I'm all ears. Because chances are you're going to base your decision on something other than your opinion. If you're a liberal judge and you have the audacity now to complain about the Trump administration after years of you abusing the very document you now claim you're defending, I've got no real interest in that. If you value the Constitution as written, then your decisions, not just this one, but the ones 30 years ago, should have been consistent all along that vein. But they haven't been. And here's why. You hate Trump as much as the liberals do, so you want to spin now and all of a sudden think you're an originalist. You're not. You're a game player. And a lot of these federal judges are game players, and they have been for years. Not the originalist, not the textualist. I get those folks. I'm talking about those folks that get appointed by the Barack Obamas of the world, by the FDRs of the world, and they think this system is designed for them to rule. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Thomas Jefferson, he fought against this lordship of the federal judiciary. A couple of his quotes, and I hope this judge knows these quotes. He says, the Constitution, this is Jefferson, the Constitution is a mere thing of wax in the hands of the judiciary, which they may twist and shape into any form they please. He didn't like it. He's right. Listen to this. On every question of construction, carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates. He's saying be tethered to something, or Harvard, as you might say, moored to something. This judge attacking Trump has never seemingly been moored to any philosophy other than his own opinion of what the law should be. So he may be technically right on the due process issue, but I don't have a lot of respect for that. I just don't. I'm trying to find consistency in the judiciary, because I'm going to tell you something. Look at this. Is that writing changing by me holding it up in your eyes?
No.
What do those words mean to you?
They mean what the founders and the
Right.
original document
It does.
tells us.
But take a look at, I know you can't read it, but the words on this page,
Mhm.
those are words. And if that was the Constitution, that is our paramount, preeminent document, those words should matter, shouldn't they?
Absolutely.
What if I was a federal judge and I said, well, I don't like that word because I know what's best? That makes him a king, doesn't it?
That makes him a radical activist.
That's the rub I'm getting to.
Yeah.
What do they call Trump?
A
They think he's a king.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a monarch. These judges are 1,000 times worse because they don't even have the ability under the Constitution to do anything but interpret.
Yeah.
Yet when they do, they take out words and they misconstrue words.
Yeah.
1,000 times worse than a.
And they're
so-called
unelected because they're appointed to those positions. So there's another.
That was my next point. Think about this. Liberals. Trump's killing democracy. He's killing democracy. No, democracy was dying the day you gave unelected judges the right to dictate to us.
Yep.
How's that democratic? How's a judge that was appointed to a position for the entirety of his or her life now writing laws, erasing laws, reconfining and redrafting, and you say, well, that's part of our system. No, it goes to show your hypocrisy.
Yep.
That's where the real problem has been.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap all this up real quick because the institutions have been there for a reason. And I don't mind all the institutions as long as they're playing ball fairly and objectively. So what Trump has done is not illegal. It's not unlawful. The due process violation can be cured, and that will be rectified. And at that stage, we'll just send the guy right back to Salvador, where I believe he belongs.
Yep.
I guess that makes me a bad guy.
No, it makes you somebody that believes in the original intent. I think, and again, not just to talk. I think we need more people like you that know the law, understand the Constitution. We need more folks like yourself in these positions as judges. Unfortunately, folks that fall on your side of the political persuasion, if you were to be appointed, you would be crucified, you would be ridiculed. They would pull out anything you've ever said on a show like this or previous shows, take them out of context, whatever they could do to try to discredit you and keep you from getting that appointment. They'd also, as we've seen, they'll dig up any random, whether or not it's just something completely made up or not, but any random 30, 40 years ago accusation that's made against you, they'll throw that out there to try to destroy you.
Clarence Thomas. Or your wife can wave a flag or put a flag outside of her building, and all of a sudden, Samuel Alito, you're a fascist.
Yeah.
Look, we're dealing with a very unfair, a very unscrupulous group of people on the left. They'll do anything, they'll say anything, they'll behave anyway, but don't believe for a moment they're sincere, because they're not. One more thing I'll point out about these Democrats, the inconsistency here speaks volumes. It really does. If you're an illegal alien and you're a criminal, they'll ignore it. If you're a visa holder or criminal who favors Hamas, they'll glorify it.
Yeah.
You see the stuff in Colombia?
Yeah.
Come on. Why do they always seem to take the wrong side? Senator Van Hollen, I'm talking to you now. The man gets on a plane.
Yeah.
Hold on. He gets on a plane. We paid for it.
Yep.
We paid for it. He flies all the way to El Salvador. And then he tells us this terrible, tragic story about how he was just going to meet with his constituent. Can't you find a phone I mean, do a Zoom. Save us that $10,000. You could have Zoomed this conversation.
FaceTime.
Hold on, I'm going to get to this. Hold on. So he flies all the way across the world. And he goes down to meet with this MS-13 member who happens to beat his wife. Again, fine choice in selecting your victim class, Democrats. But he goes down there and he says he's on the way to the president and he's blocked by soldiers. Very dramatic story. Blocked by soldiers. They tell him he cannot go any further. So he says, okay, I'm going to go back to my hotel, drink some scotch. I don't know if he did that. Go back to the hotel, hang out a little bit there. And then he says he got a call that sure enough, they're going to let him in. And the press asked him, why do you think they did that? And he says, well, public pressure. From
who?
war.
Do you really think that they felt pressure from the citizens of his state?
Stop. The president of El Salvador gives a rip about what the liberals are complaining about in this country, right? He doesn't care about that. He probably just wanted to see this knucklehead come through. I bet you Trump said, let him go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and let him do it because we're going to make sure that the whole world sees this guy fly across the world to meet with a MS-13 wife beater.
Yeah.
And do you think for a moment this senator gives one rat's butt about due process? If he did, I bet his prisons in Maryland are filled with criminals. Filled. All of which are claiming they were denied due process. You know, I was a federal law clerk for a time, and I can tell you this, those mandamus, those orders come through all the time. They're talking about due process. He could have stayed home in Maryland and found 1,000 due process cases right there. But no. I'm flying to Salvador because I'm going to be a big boy. Let me tell you about these people. And I know these politicians, right? This was a junket for him. I would love to have followed him around the rest of the evening. I bet you he had the best dinners. He had the best drinks. He had the best company, told the best jokes, rode first class. I bet you he didn't fly Southwest down there. I bet you Spirit. I bet you Spirit didn't take him down there. You know it was going to be a really nice airliner, right? Or it's going to be it's probably a private jet. It's probably AOC's jet for all we know.
Look, you lost me when you said he was going to be a big boy. I'm still rolling at that.
Well, it's just crazy. I've been around these politicians my entire life on the federal and state level. When you people are going to understand that these people, and I'm not simply talking about Van Hollen, I'm stereotyping now, that these people are the lowest common denominator. Most of these men and women can't afford a plane flight.
No.
You may want to glorify them. You may think they're cool and they're big, over-fitting suits. They do this to get free trips and to get free meals. This is a junket. I've seen it my entire life. Do you think a politician needs to fly across the country to see something he can see equally as well on social media or on Facebook or a Zoom meeting? No, he does it because A, he loves the free trip. B, he loves to feel really important. And C, he thinks he's got to make a name for himself as caring. We've seen it here in Mississippi. A few years ago, a tornado comes through. It happens every year. We have a lot of tornadoes. God bless us. Our people have been devastated over the years by tornadoes. And politicians will take off from Jackson with a chainsaw and a pickup truck. And they'll show up to a community, cut one limb.
Make sure it's photographed.
Take the picture, put it on Facebook, and drive back to Jackson.
Yeah. Here's Senator so-and-so helping, giving back to the community.
Sure you did.
Yeah.
Sure you did. And just as this guy was over there caring about due process, when his prisons are filled with due process violations. So anyway, he did this because the Democrats are looking for leaders. Mm-hmm. And whether it's Booker with his 20-something hour marathon on the Senate floor, or whether it's AOC and Bernie filling up rallies and literally preaching socialism from the rafters, or whether it's Van Hollen, they're trying desperately to be seen. Yeah. Egos. I'm telling you, these politicians are the worst people in the world. All of them. Well, 90% of them. They care nothing about you. They don't care about me. It's about free trips, free drinks, free lobbyist money, free ball games. You think they're doing this because they are sacrificing somebody? Like I said, these cats can't afford plane tickets, but they'll fly everywhere just to go on a junket. It gets worse. seminars, conventions.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me, let me see if I can get this straight. Are you telling me that you serve in a representative body? Let's just say there's 50 Republicans there, or more. And you talk to them every day. Every day. But now you need to fly to Cancun so we can have a convention and talk about strategy. Come on, people. They're using your money on vacations. You know that's what they're doing.
I got to ask a question.
Yes.
All right, so you served for 16 years.
I don't want to talk about it. Go ahead.
But we're not going to talk about your service.
That's fine. That's fine.
What's the craziest trip that you got offered or that a colleague took?
Oh, man, Turkey. To Turkey for some reason. I have no idea what the pressing matter is in Turkey.
Or how it relates to Mississippi.
But I know it was like a 2-week junket. I didn't go. I take great pride in saying that not once did the taxpayers pay for me to get on an airplane and go somewhere. You know what I did? I paid for it myself.
Yeah.
I know that's mine, but not that anybody cares. I paid for my own trips. I paid for my own meals. Mm-hmm. Even when we had special sessions, I would give that money back to the state.
Yep.
And nobody cares. They still hated me for it. The point is that my position is that Van Hollen is the due process crime fighter he claims he is. He could have paid for it with his own money, couldn't he?
Could have.
Right. Oh, it gets better. So now, not to be outdone, 2 House of Representatives misfits are now also asking for permission to fly on our dime to El Salvador. Now, what are they going to offer that Van Hollen didn't offer? Sit over there and drink Mai Tais or margaritas and talk about the weather?
Well, Van Hollen obviously came back and told them what a great time it was, so now they want to go too.
5-star resort. Can I get over there? The good news is for the Democrats now, they don't control the House.
Yeah.
And so they had to ask, what's his name?
Johnson.
No, it wasn't John. No, it was a committee. Committee.
Okay.
Committee. They have to ask the committee chair. Let me find it here in a second. And basically, you have to ask, please, Mr. Chairman, may I use taxpayer dollars to go to Salvador and maybe go to a beach? And then he has to make the call. 99% of the time, they just rubber stamp it. Yeah. This time, he wrote him back and he says, "You got to be kidding me," which I thought was hilarious, and just castigated them, just attacked them in this letter. But it's I don't know. I mean, people say, well, why don't you like politicians? Or why did you become more and more liberty-minded and anti-government the longer you served? Man, when you see what I've seen, you realize that the least capable people in the world, the very worst people in the world, serve in office. And they have no idea what they're doing. They don't care. They want free stuff, just like Democrats most of the time. And when you figure out that that's government, why would you ever trust government?
Yeah. Well, Chris, I didn't serve, obviously, but I came up to Jackson a time or two to visit you. And one of the things that still sticks me to this day is I remember standing there and hearing another politician, I heard this said, "I'm going to find out which lobbyist is going to pay for lunch today." And that just stuck with me. It was like, why are you that worried about, can't you pay for your own lunch?
And it's not just lunches. I'm going to tell you something, guys. People don't understand, you think about these ignorant politicians that don't really have any value and how they end up going into office and serving for 8, 12 years and then retire millionaires.
Yeah.
You think that's legit?
No,
it's not legit.
Not at all.
It's not legit. Never has been. They just hadn't gotten caught. And they won't get caught because the system protects like-minded people. Yeah. The ones that get hit are the ones that are rebels or outliers, right? Yeah. The ones that don't, bow to leadership. They're the ones that get hit. Everybody else gets rich because they're all playing the same game. Here's the game, in case you haven't noticed. Find a way to get free stuff. Find a way to get seen. Make sure your ego is squared away. And then, Lord forbid, if you have to leave office one day, you're going to be a lobbyist.
Yep.
I introduced a bill that would have prohibited these members leaving the Senate or the House from becoming lobbyists for at least 4 years. I didn't think that was too much to ask. How about a 4-year hiatus before you take your position and get wealthy on it?
That makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, no. I was just a bad guy. Horrible human being for introducing that.
Well, I remember one that you put in where you were trying to at least allow elected officials to opt out of the retirement plan if they so choose. You are vilified for that because they didn't want to be seen on record as being one of the ones who didn't want to give up that soft pillow when they retired.
That's the thing. See, I never thought it was fair for us to have a special retirement program.
Yeah.
I thought that was my mom and dad worked for the state. They didn't have a special retirement program. Mm-hmm. I thought it's just silly to me, and I don't need it. I practice law. I've made money. I can take care of myself. Like I can fly if I wanted to go to Salvador, I can fly myself down there. I don't need the government to pay for it.
Yeah.
But that's not how these people see this. It's just one junket, one thing after the other. Yeah, I introduced that bill, and I made it real simple. Because my first thought was, you're going to love this. I ever tell you this story? I first go to the administrator and I say, look, I don't feel right taking this special retirement. And she says, you have to. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm a senator. I don't want this. No, sir, you don't understand. It's in the law. You have to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. What's that all about? So some knucklehead inscribed it, put it in the law, and they did that. So they would have plausible deniability. We can't help it.
We can't turn it down.
We can't turn it
down,
not allowed. Right? So I say, okay, fine. What will it take? I started researching it. I'll introduce a law. Mm-hmm. Now get this. My first bill, which went over like a ton of lead in the ocean, was just to abolish the special retirement program. Mm-hmm. I didn't go anywhere. They hated me for that. My second bill, which I thought was more fair, at least to me, a 7-day opt-out at the end of a year session. Any year session. At the end of that session, you have 7 days to opt out of the program. Whew. Hated me worse for it.
Yeah, because you put them on record.
Because if I did it, why didn't they do it?
Yeah.
Right? The whole game is about protecting their butts.
Yeah.
The whole game is about making sure the people can't figure out the schemes they're playing. And those back rooms, they exist. And there's a lot of women back there, a lot of booze back there, and a lot of steak back there. Those back rooms exist. And those lobbyists get their way in those back rooms because they're paying for the fun. Right?
One of these days, we're either going to need to do a whole expose episode with you talking about some of the things that you saw, either on this show or on my show, The Right Side. But at some point, I just think that'll be fascinating. I know you lived it, so I know a large part of that's frustrating for sure. But again, the public needs to know this type of stuff. Some do, those who are in the know, they already know, but there are a lot of folks out there that think that Senator Jim Bob, who's been there for 40 years, is there to take care of them, where Senator Jim Bob's in that back room you're talking about with all those women and all those booze, selling you out every opportunity he gets. Doesn't matter if he's got an R by his name. Doesn't matter if he's got a D by his name. He's selling you out simply because he's getting a good offer to do it. Maybe it's not even that good of an offer, but it's a fun offer, so he's willing to do it. And that's the problem. And I think that's why you became jaded when it comes to the political side. That's why I'm jaded when it comes to it's one of those things where once you see behind the curtain and you actually see what the wizard actually looks like, you don't see it the same way anymore. Is that fair?
No, it is. It is. It's a heck of a mess. The luster too. I mean, I don't know where we got the idea that politicians were somehow better. Maybe we watched too many FDR movies as kids. I don't know. But these people are just despicable. And I can't say enough about it. Now, again, not all are like that. I have to say that because they all get their feelings hurt. They're the most thin-skinned people on the planet. There's probably 10, 15% that are trying to do the right thing. Of course, you'll never hear their names. And the reason you won't is because they're the ones that are punished. Yeah. He didn't pass any bills. No, he was punished because he wasn't falling in line. Yeah. He couldn't raise any money. No, he was punished because he wasn't falling in line. Yeah. And the ones you see that rise to the top, those are the game players. Yeah. Those are the ones that are cutting the deals and shaking the hands and kissing the babies behind the scenes. And they don't care about the people.
Well, kissing rears.
Well, let's put it this way. Whether it's the Senate Majority Leader, whether it's the Speaker of the House, whether it is the Lieutenant Governor, whatever, if any one of those three men were to stop abruptly one day, you would have to have surgery to remove the noses. You understand? You understand?
I do.
And what's funny is you see this mentality, and it's group thinking following. They don't care.
No.
They basically are less than men because they give away their man card, following these other men, doing whatever they're told, just so they can get a committee assignment, so they can get a campaign donation. And that was I always thought it was embarrassing. I mean, why would you want to hold a committee assignment if you can't make any independent decisions and you have to call your boss to have a decision? But why would you want to hold it? I mean, I always thought my boss were the people. But no, that's not his in D.C. or Jackson or any other state capital. You have to ask permission. So you're not a committee chairman. You're a punk. That's the way I always saw it.
The people should be the ultimate boss of a politician. And I know we're getting close to the end, but one last rant. The people should be the boss of the politicians, but too many take the easy way out. They think that these are their leaders when they're not. They're supposed to be the representatives. The other issue is they don't bother, and I'm talking about the public, they don't bother to research any of these folks anymore. They just look at Senator Billy Bob and go, well, Billy Bob's been there for 41 years, so I got to keep voting for Billy Bob. Meanwhile, Billy Bob's been selling you out for probably 36 of that 41 years that he's there. He might have gone in with noble intentions, but he got corrupted by the system.
He probably didn't even go in with noble intentions. Let me tell you about Billy Bob. Billy Bob he's the guy that went fishing with your papaw.
Yep.
And you think because he wants to know your papaw that you should vote for him indefinitely.
Oh,
even though Billy Bob hasn't been a conservative since the day he swore into office. Anyway, enough of that. It's people should care. They don't. I mean, my experience is after all those years is that there's about 20% paying attention. About 20%. Some of those are watching right now, and nobody else cares. They say they do. And if you were to get them in a room and say these things, they're like, heck yeah, we're with you. No, they're not. They're going to sit there and ignore it, and they're going to sit there and play on their games, do whatever it is they do. And then when the election comes up, the individual that raises the most money
is the winner.
Is going to purchase the election because that same person sits on his couch and gets that direct mail piece and says, oh my God, I didn't know that boy was so bad. Because you ain't got sense enough to do your own research.
Nope.
Welcome to our experiment. And it begs the question whether it can continue if we just don't get more involved. But we're not. So what's the voting rate now? 30%? Maybe less, depending on the election?
Probably less.
I bet you city elections are 7 or 8%.
Oh, it's pretty bad. I mean, because you can tell by just looking at the numbers at the end of a city election, and you see how few turned out, and you know how many lived there.
The mayor was elected with 17 votes.
Yeah.
There's 3,000 people in the city. Anyway, I got to go. I'm a little tired. I've enjoyed the show today. Thank you for being here. Same with you. Please feel free to share the show. We'd love to have your feedback. Post underneath there if you have an opinion. We appreciate that very much. And we take that very seriously that you watch and take that very seriously that you help spread the word. So thank you very much. Once again, this is Chris McDaniel's America. This is the home of the anti-establishment movement, in case you couldn't tell, in this country. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new MyPillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.